Welcome to the Miscalaireomm podcast. This is episode beta 0 test 1. The Miscalaireomm is my pet project, so I can talk to interesting people about interesting things and make that my smorgasbord of Miscalaireomm ideas. So when Paige and I were talking the other day about gender, I was like, we have to turn this into a podcast. This is so good. And Paige was like, we do have to turn this into a podcast. And so we've turned into a podcast.
That's amazing.
Welcoming our first official guest to the first non-official episode of the Miscalaireomm, we have Paige. Paige Field, actually. I know you're thinking, Field, are they related? And the answer to that question happens to be yes, we are related.
What must you think of our family?
I know. Are we giving a good impression of the Fields right now?
I think we are.
I'm sure somebody in the family just grimaced. And that's a whole conversation about how we met each other. But we are both in a process of exploring our genders, being part of the queer community. And so we thought we'd sit down and give you our perspective, which Paige initially came up with, of 5 different ways to think and talk about gender. We're not expecting this to be fully conclusive of all ways of talking about gender. Disclaimer 1. Disclaimer 2 is we have both only had our experience of gender, which has been varied over time. However, there are a lot of other people who have had a lot of other experiences of gender over a lot more time because trans people have been with us for all of time. And so some of our perspectives will not reflect what everybody on the planet thinks. And we're only talking from our perspective. We're not trying to be inclusive of everybody else's perspective. So if I say a statement, that I'm saying that statement from my perspective. So everybody just get your rage bait comments calm down ahead of time. It's going to get messy. Welcome, Paige.
It's good to be here.
What would you like to tell the audience about your background or history or experience?
I've had a lot of experiences in history.
Good enough for me. Would you care to share a short biography about where you grew up, what cultural or religious experiences you've had, and how that, in brief, may be shaping your experience of gender?
Grew up conservative religious, left that, went, hey, I'm going to go see if I have all kinds of spiritual experiences and things outside of religion, and I did, so I didn't go back. I was like, I might be gender fluid. At 18.
At 18?
Yeah, and I was like, this seems important to explore. And then I didn't for about a decade. Pandemic was dark. Then I visited Ann Arbor during art fair, and people were alive, and vaccines were back in the world. And I said, what is this joy? And I was in a used clothing shop, but I bought something new. Actually, I walked by a dress and I was like, that is beautiful, and I think it would look good on me. And then they didn't have my size. And I was like, this is an important thought. I need to figure this out. So then I was like, okay, next dress over. Ooh, cute. So I tried it on, and then I couldn't take it off, and I bought it while wearing it.
Why couldn't you take it off?
It made me happy.
Ah, interesting. So happy. You're like, I'll buy this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was glowing. The person who was taking my money was like, you're glowing, and it's amazing. And then I walked out of there, and I walked down 4 blocks and got 3 compliments from strangers about how much joy I exuded in it.
In the middle of an art festival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the middle of Ann Arbor, which is a special place.
Yes, a special kind of, if you're not from Michigan, it's like the hippie Berkeley of Michigan is Ann Arbor.
Yeah. And then I was like, this is incredible. I feel so much joy. I want to feel this way all of the time. And then leaned hardcore into femme for a long time, was meditating one time, saw masculine come up and was like, hey, I'm still here too. And I was like, we have done 27 years of this. I'm doing something new right now. And then, here I am some 3 years later after that. I'm 30 now, and I'm like, yeah, hey, masculine, I'm going to stop ignoring you. So that somewhere puts me in gender fluid, non-binary, pan, multi-gender. I don't know, we're just figuring it out as we go.
Have they made a pronoun up for this experience yet? We have 72. Do any of them fit?
Brief story. I was in a bar in Ann Arbor a couple months ago, and somebody came up to me as I was presenting my non-binariness, and they're like, what are your pronouns? And I was like, if you figure it out, would you please let me know? And they were like, pronouns are, and I'm like, no, you don't understand.
No.
I'm like 5 inches away from using like fey creature pronouns.
Hello, otherkin. Welcome to our space here. Okay, so I think we, as the collective can agree, Paige has gone through a lot in the gender expression world. Coming in the foof, especially coming from not growing up in West Coast Berkeley, right? We growing up in Michigan, in the Midwest, in at least my family was very, very Christian conservative.
My family was very Christian conservative, but I went to public school in Ann Arbor. And like one of the high schools is the Ann Arbor is what it is. So like I had a long time of like, perspective taking. If I were born into any world of any gender, I should make things right for people. And I spent a lot of time thinking about, if I was born the other way around, I'd be good with that too.
So I think this is part of your story I haven't talked about, which is you grew up in very conservative Christian world.
Oh yeah.
From my understanding. And you were in a very liberal pocket of Michigan, of the Midwest. And in high schools that were, one of them was the Rainbow Zebra, like pretty progressive experiences.
Yeah.
But then would go home to not a Rainbow Zebra being a thing.
No, I was one of like 5 kids in like the Christian club at the school. And I was like,
Jesus.
Yeah. But also, this is not a podcast about religious experiences.
No,
we're talking about gender today.
Good, really unpacking. Well, that's his Paige's background story. My background story is I grew up in a alt-right Christian homeschooled experience where I grew up in a military family that moved every 18 months and is multi-generational military family as well. So all of that experience was a real tough experience. Kind of as I recover some of my memories, there would be times where my mom would find me in her room wearing her makeup, and she thought it was cute. But my father did not find that cute. Or there would be times where I would love to try on her high heels and go walking around the house in her high heels. Another thing which my father was not appreciative of. Didn't appreciate that. There was one summer we were visiting my grandmother, and my grandmother took her hot curling iron, and she had this beautiful boudoir bathroom. It was like very spa-like. And we sat on the side of her jacuzzi tub, and she curled some of my hair into, these beautiful little curls. And we looked in the mirror, and I was like, oh my God, I love this. And I ran, and I was going to go show my parents this thing. And my father was not overjoyed by these curls at all. And I later learned this is a little T, pulled my mother aside and said, if your mother ever does that again, we are not coming back. It's like, oh. So that got beat out of me real quick as a kid. Now, I can't ever remember any physical punishments for being sissy, but there was definitely not support for that, and that got shoved down and shut down for a long time. I came out of my whole Christian mind fuck when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I first realized that I was attracted to guys. And I grew up in such a conservative world that I didn't even know the word homosexual existed. I didn't even know that was an option or a thing. And in all of the sex ed, which was entirely abstinence-based sex ed, of course, there was no even consideration or discussion of anybody other than a married man and woman getting together. So being attracted to other guys was just completely off my radar as an option of things that could exist in the world. And sissy guys was also off of the way I could ever experience, because I lived in military base housing most of the time. And I was homeschooled, so I didn't have access to public school. And even the internet had a filter on it, which would send a report of everything you looked at with a code to control whether or not the computer turned on. So my access to information was very limited as well. And I was an autistic kid, which was having a hard time fitting in socially anyways. So I didn't have access to the experience of other things. And by the time I was about 21 or 22, I finally was driving home after yoga one day, and I just had to pull over on the side of the road and go, oh, I'm gay. I couldn't even like say it out loud. I was just like mouthed the words and then fell into, a breakdown phase. And so I came out as gay, and I had identified as a cis gay for a long time. However, since my early 20s, I'm 31. I wish I was 29. And actually, those were bad years. I'm glad those are gone. But really never got the whole cis gay perspective of gender thing locked in really well. I didn't experience gender the way they did. I didn't engage the way they did. I often presented in ways which were more queer and less gay, which is kind of words you have to know. And in the last 2-ish years or so, with the advent of AI, I've been able to have a lot of conversations about what are all of the different gender expressions, and then started coming across some of the really niche descriptions of being gender void or gender neutral or gender null, I should say. And hearing those phrases and talking them through with AI, I was able to go, that's what I feel. That is how I experience that. And it was the first time I had ever been exposed to these words and had somebody describe what these words meant. I could go, yeah, and I don't know anybody else who experiences gender like this. And I talk to my friends about gender on a very regular basis. Nobody seems to have this experience, but there's this one very specific definition, and that super applies to me. And then trying to kind of learn more about that experience and live it out in the world. I changed my pronouns out in the world back in the beginning of 2026. So I had been going by they, them pronouns since then. I had been using those pronouns in my head for longer than that. And I had a couple of close friends which referred to me as they, them, but I didn't kind of change my email signature until beginning of this year. And that's still an evolving process as well. But it shares some overlaps, but not a ton. Any reflections on those things before we move on to our 5 levels? Would you like to introduce our first level of gender?
Self-perception.
Self-perception.
Ooh, I get to talk for 5 minutes?
Of course you do.
My favorite thing in the world. Where do we even begin? Okay, so...
Here, now.
Yeah. Obviously, you and I had some things going on when we were younger people. Self-perception, very much in the he-him territory, or like,
Maybe.
Well,
tell your story, Boo. I'll tell mine. I'll tell mine when we get there.
Mine was that way, and I was like, yeah, but I don't really care. It just is the one that people use. And I'm like, okay. And then self-perception is like, I guess I will do those things. Really thinking through it very clearly. But like, even when you're not thinking through it very clearly, there is still like an element of how you perceive yourself. Moving on later in life, I'm like, there's self-perception now. Okay, I went real femme for a while. And then things in my life started not going so well. And I ended up in this like deep pit. And people are like, you no longer present femme. I'm like, I'm feminine and I will cut you, bitch.
That's a pretty intense experience of that. Can you?
But there's like a bitter hanging on to the self-perception.
Yeah.
Even though, I eventually acknowledged it too of like, yeah, that is no longer how I feel.
So you got to like angry, crotchety, biker gang femme.
Yeah.
And it's because you just needed to let go of that understanding.
I like to describe it as sorority girl who is fed up and ready to cut a bitch.
Okay.
But yeah.
That's a different persona. That's a different archetype. We know that archetype. I spent time in Ann Arbor too. Yeah, it is an archetype. Okay. And what I'm hearing you say, and I feel like this is like a hot take, is that you had gotten to that experience and you now see that as needing to let go of your hard femme expression.
Let go is like stronger. It's not like she's not still there, but like
open the door to others.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is part of this experience of gender that a lot of people don't have, which is having a constant progress happening.
Yeah.
And then not getting stuck on something and integrating more parts into the journey of gender experience. And many people I have seen get stuck on that spot of I am femme, and they just live out the rest of their experience that way. Some people are super that. Like, I'm not saying you're missing anything at all here, but other people are left one gender experience, move to another, and could move more in an integrative way, but don't because they don't want to. So good job. High five. Good job, cuz. Could you start with your definition of gender perception?
My definition of gender perception. Well, there's like an aspect of how you believe you present in the world. But then there's also an aspect of like how I feel. And that gets wacky. This is the other thing that I wanted to talk about. Because like, I'm not going to talk about your experience, but like,
Thank you.
when I talk to like pansexual people, the people will describe like, yeah, I'm not attracted to people's bodies. I'm attracted to their souls. And I'm like, I'm going to say pangender in the way of like, I'm just a soul and a spirit existing. And that is a true statement. But I have this dual experience where I have that as like one part of who I am. And gender is basically unimportant to me. But then I also have this other like state I can shift in where I'm like, there is also these other things that exist. And like when I'm over here, it's like I'm reading a book and tuned out of like hearing what's going on around me. But then when I close the book, I'm like, I can hear things again, and there's this other layer of senses or like something. And like that is where my like what many people would describe as like gender exists. And it's not always important to me, but like when it's important to me, it's like
Really important.
well,
So what I'm hearing you say is that your understanding of gender perception is how other people see you. We'll talk more about that. But also about how you experience the world. And how you experience the world is at different levels. And there's a kind of a zoomed out meta level. And at that level, you go, I'm a soul having a physical existence. What is this stupid thing called made up gender? This is irrelevant, uninteresting, and not important to me.
yeah, I'm like, I'm here. Can we work? Can we get along as people?
Right. Like, why are we talking about this? Like, it's not a thing. And then you can kind of dial in the microscope. And at another level, you are kind of more in the body, more engaged in the world. And at that level, gender is something that is important and valuable.
Just like emotions.
Just like emotions. And sometimes you are in like an emotionless flow, like if you're maybe coding or something like that. Emotions are offline, not there. But then there's other times where they are very much there.
If I'm in a flow while coding, usually my gender is cat, but
That is a very common gender while coding. It's funny you mentioned that. That's a very common gender while coding. And then in other spaces, when you're not in cat gender, other kind friends, you are welcome here. We are not making fun of you. That your emotions become very important to you. And just like that part of you might turn it on and off. Gender is similar in that it is not important at sometimes and is important at other times. And when it's not important, it really doesn't matter. And when it does matter, it really does matter.
yeah. And even when it really does matter, it can't always like express for many reasons, but we're going to talk about that in the perception section.
My understanding of self-perception is a little different than Paige's, but very, very connected. I too experience myself at many different levels, from kind of very zoomed out. If you spent much time meditating, this is kind of like a very zoomed out meditative space. And then kind of more zoomed in the body. And even in my experience, it can be like shoved into one expression or part of the body. Like not only can I be really deeply into my body, but really deeply into like the narrative experience that's happening around me. And there's other times where I'm just like not as vested in that story. And then I can also be like really into an emotional tonality or something that I'm experiencing, or part of my sensory systems. I'm autistic, and part of my autistic expression is I have sensory integration dysfunction, which means my body gets all of the information your body gets, but your body deletes like 95% of it right off the bat. You don't have to process it. My body lets like a lot more of it in. And so I am constantly processing way more sensory information in my brain than most people are. My gender gets tied up in those sensory experiences as well. There's definitely there's a word for this, where senses get mixed.
Synesthesia.
Thank you. Synesthesia. Good job, Paige. Cat gender. And this is going to become a thing.
You're going to tease me like that on camera?
I'm not, it's with love, though. So just like I can experience gender at different levels of perceptions, it can get a really intense experience for me. When I engage in that, I have to essentially decide at what level I will engage with gender at, or am I going to take like the totality of the whole thing, sum it up, and take the median? How am I going to experience gender? And I've spent a lot of time in meditative space in all of these versions for years and years and years. And it's finally come to my awareness that actually where I feel most at home in this expression is in the way zoomed out side of things. I feel most in tune with who I am from a gender perspective. Am I male? Am I female? Like, where is that? And this phrase really helped me. If I think about my soul having a bunch of holes in it, and part of those holes are my emotions, and part of those are my values, and part of those holes are my relationships. One of those holes is my gender. And when I think about that gender hole, when I kind of sense internally what feels that space. And if you haven't really done a lot of thinking about gender, this probably makes no sense to you at all. But if you have thought about gender a little bit, if you just kind of sense into the field that is you, you see what I did there? Field that is you. Field that is you. And find where you have all those things, your relationship stored, your emotions stored, kind of all those layers of your energy, if you will. And maybe somewhere there's a gender experience there. Like for me, it just feels very much like over here in my body. And if you think about what's in that area of gender, how do you feel that in your body, in your system, in your mind? That is where I experience my idea of gender from. And when I'm in that spot, what is the most true is not like I'm a man, nor is it I'm a bro, or nor is it I'm a trans woman, or nor is it I'm a woman, or nor is it, insert all of the other gender expressions. We have, 72 pronouns plus out there. In that part of me, it is void. And this is an interesting idea that was new to me, which is that in this experience, it's not just a neutral, it's not gender neutral. It's not like I'm neither this nor that. Does it really matter? A little indifference. It's not general neutral. It's an active void. It's an active lack. It's an empty space. It is a vacuum. And it turns out there's words for that, such as gender void or gender null, which means in that part of your soul where you experience gender, if you feel an active void or an active negative space, a term which might be relevant is gender null. And because of that, I had to go, my gender expression is really not about the binary at all. And so I've been very kind of angry at a lot of binary related gender expressions recently because I was told it had to be in relationship to that in some way, like either on the binary or off the binary, or if you were off the binary, oftentimes you're still somehow in relationship to the binary. And you could be indifferent, but there was never a talk of like this existential understanding of gender. That's where I have kind of found my spot. So when I say gender perception, what I mean is in that part of your internal universe that is your experience, there's a part which is your gender. And if you feel into that, what do you feel? So that is my understanding of gender perception. Yes, in the front row, in the fake crystal, I did get you a new one. We do need to fix this, ma'am. And the shining blue hair.
So I was following along in your meditation. And the place that I found where I opened or it stepped into whatever was gender was just like sexy, horny, and hot, and no particular place on the binary other than those things.
That's an interesting experience.
I wanted to share with the class.
Thank you for sharing with the class. We're now demonetized. There's only very specific sponsors who are interested. And I'm glad you. I would also like to congratulate me for not answering your rhetorical question seriously there. because I wanted to just jump up and say cat gender really bad. And I didn't, so good job, us.
We could both jump up and say cat gender.
That will be the end of the podcast.
Okay.
Any questions on gender perception from that
From your description?
or from this conversation? Should we move on to the next level?
Let's move on.
Thank you for watching our segment on gender perception. Moving on to our next one, social scripts, level 2 of gender.
Ooh, bum bum bum.
Level 2, social scripts.
Fight.
But for real, girl, for real.
I'm ready to cut a bitch.
I'll start this one out. Okay, when I think about gender scripts, what I think about is if you play a video game and that video game has a storyline that's baked into it, that storyline might be called the character script. And you can do a little bit off of the script, you know, that's written for the character, but you kind of got to follow the script. It's kind of pre-written in there. It isn't up for negotiation. Some minor edits are allowed, but this is your only option. And that kind of is both how you experience yourself, what is allowed to be in that gender bubble, how you can engage with the reality around you, how you kind of inhabit this narrative structural world that we're living in, and also how that character relates to the other characters around you and how they are allowed to experience the world as well. So I have a script. This is the only option. There are slight minor variants. They can only have one of two scripts. There's also slight minor variances in the ways that those slight scripts interact with each other is also pre-scripted throughout the video game. Slight modifications possible, but not very many. And so when you are going through the world, you are forced into these narrative structures. You don't have any other choice but to be in these narrative structures. So it's like if you woke up you were playing a video game and you were playing some war simulator, and then all of a sudden Dora the Explorer just crashed onto the screen, and then everything else was Technicolor, and you were now playing as Dora the Explorer in a Technicolor war zone. Why am I in a war zone? And that would make no sense to you if you were playing the video game at all, right? You were just, these are the two options, the two characters, but now I'm Dora the Explorer in the war zone. What's going on? That is, for me, what it felt like to start breaking a gender script or a social script. Because there are two options. They are pre-written, minor edits, predefined ways of relating to them. Remember, I grew up in a really conservative world. This is the only thing ever displayed. And I then didn't fit. I knew I didn't fit into anything that was happening. I didn't fit into the role I was assigned. I didn't fit into the other role that was assigned out there. I didn't fit into the whole narrative structure at all. Just completely off the mat. I'm Dora the Explorer in Call of Duty. But I can't talk to anybody about it. Nobody else is going through it. Nobody else is having these thoughts, feelings, or expressions, right? Living in a little cult world. And that was a very confusing experience for me. And so now when I think about social scripts, I am aware of what the narrative structures are, probably more than a lot of people are. Not more a lot of queer people are, but more than a lot of other people are. And I also have really examined my relationship to a lot of those. Now the social scripts I choose are more based on how I actually like to experience. However, big asterisk here, which is as an autistic person, I am forced to mask and create a persona to go engage with the world because they're not comfortable engaging with a raw, unfiltered autistic person. I'm talking to all you neurotypicals out there. And as part of my mask that I have to put on, there has to be an experience of gender in that mask for us to be able to have our social communication back and forth. Because even if I just embodied the experience of gender void in front of people and tried to live that out, it would just be so unaccessible to people that are already strained social interaction because I'm autistic and I have to mask because you're unable to engage with different neurotypes would be just exploded to another order of magnitude. So I still engage in a lot of gender scripting, especially when I'm interacting with other people, not because I want to and not because I don't know what it is, but because I have to be able to engage out in this social world, at least with other autistic people. When I'm with autistic people, it's a very different experience. What would you say about social scripts?
It felt like not just like across gender lines, but like every individual I knew had like a rule book for like the kinds of things that would happen to them. And I was like, I don't know why this keeps happening to this person. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know why the things that are happening to me keep happening to me. And I can't explain why it was like gender in particular where I had this experience. Like, it's a big one in society, don't get me wrong, but there was a lot of other experiences where I was like, yes, this social script exists and I'm deciding not to follow it. And it was unrelated to my perception of gender. But then...
So it was just a refusal to follow rules energy.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of that. I mean, like, that was, I think, a literal mantra that I had when I was 18 and left conservative Christianity. The thing that I repeated to myself, like, every day, multiple times a day was, if you break some rules, you might just learn something. And I just, like, spent a lot of that year breaking as many rules as were, like, defined for me. And I was like, oh, actually, it's gonna be okay if I do that. And also, I enjoy my life more when I do that.
What I'm hearing you say is you had to break out of this, like, trauma programming that you, like, religious indoctrination cult level.
Yes, but this is not a podcast about religious trauma.
It's all about religious trauma. Every podcast is about religious trauma.
Don't disagree.
The reason I say this is because not only did you have to, the way you clawed yourself out of that was by saying, if you break some rules, you might learn something. If you break some rules, you might learn something. If you break some rules, you might learn something.
Yes.
And just like that clawed you out of Christianity, it sounded like it clawed you out of your indoctrination around gender, too.
Kind of. That year was the year I was like, oh, I might be gender fluid. And then just put it on a shelf.
Yes, because you were already deprogramming from one system.
Yeah.
And I think, like, what I'm inviting you to realize here, dear listener, is that the same tool which tore down cult training is the same tool that can tear down gender limitation. And that tool is if you break rules, you might learn something. If you break rules, you might learn something. I bet I've had that mantra too. And so the fact that tool works kind of in the same mechanism in both of those topics should tell you that they are related. Should tell you that those two topics are related.
Just as a brief aside, I was like, who can teach me to break some rules and learn something? And I was like, that person who I used to know and everybody recently has told me to avoid, but they need some friends right now. And so I became best friends with a narcissistic sociopath. And I learned that if you break some rules, you might just learn something, but it's not always the best mantra. It did help a lot and caused some other problems I had to resolve after that. But, you know, there was like it's not straight, but there's progress made.
I think that's to our underage listeners. Yes, don't break all the rules. Don't break all the rules. One rule you should follow is like, comment, and subscribe. You should follow that rule. Okay, so you went through your rule-breaking phase. How did your social understanding of gender continue?
It was there, and then I wanted to enter the queer spaces, but I was like, I'll get it wrong there. And that is terrifying.
A lot of people feel that. And say more about that feeling.
It was like, I'm 18, I'm like being like gender fluid-ish. And some friends are like, we want to take you to a sex toy party, but it's all women only are invited. And I say, I'm not feeling feminine today. And they're like, just pretend.
Oh! Ah!
Yeah, right? And this was like 2014. And so I pretend and show up and I'm like, this feels wrong. This space is not for me in this moment. But then I have the simultaneous intuition of like, I don't think a lot of other people in this room feel this way either. Yeah, the night ends and like that helps me cement that I'm gonna like put this gender fluid thing on the shelf because I'm like, I don't feel comfortable leaning like halfway into femininity. Women deal with so much shit. If I'm just only there for the good stuff and not there for the bad stuff, like what the, that feels like I'm taking something and it's wrong. And that means I'm like, okay, I'll put this on the shelf until I'm ready to like more fully commit to this. Which I then did, but was also an extreme choice.
I think it does very much tell the story of the next chapter in that you were now questioning, you came in to, you were, from my understanding, presenting very masc in your earlier teenage years.
People would compliment me on like my feminine hips and I would like it. And I got my fingernails painted for the first time at church, which was strange. And then all the men were like, you're not supposed to do that. And the women who painted my nails were like, it's fine. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it's fine. So like, not the most hyper masculine.
I wish I had the women in your church.
Right?
That would be great. Just thinking about this woman called Corley. If Corley was into me being a cutesies, how my life would have been different. Okay, so like a relatively masc understanding, but with some femme leanings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then being invited into a space which is, you know, sexualized high femme energy, it sounds like.
I mean, people weren't trying to like flirt with each other, but it
wasn't
was
a
like
sex
about
toy party.
sex toys.
So in that space, however we want to label it.
Oh, I have very particular feelings about the word sexualized. It's pretty limited in scope. Not an important part of this.
We'll find out. We'll find out because it very well may. So you're in this space and you're looking around and going, I don't know what, but not that. And I hear you clocking people in the room going, half y'all don't believe this either.
Yeah.
And I'm already going through a lot of this shit, but if all of y'all can't be figuring all this out too, and you all are faking it, it's going to be a whole hell of a lot of work to deal with all of this shit plus this shit to be able to express, honestly. So other people's lack of integrity, if your radar was correct, caused a more difficult unmasking process for you.
I'm not always sure I would call it like a lack of integrity. I believe that there's like a certain capacity that humans have. And like if people choose not to like do that, but they're like consciously aware of it, like that's fine by me. And that doesn't make like my sense of like people don't have integrity.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
Great correction. Yes. Let me change the word and try it again. Their lack of continuity.
Yeah, I'm really trying hard not to use the word authenticity.
Please don't. Please don't. We don't need that word. Don't say that word here. No, thank you, ma'am. Oh, God.
Yeah. Oh, man, that is so polarized as a word right now.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Okay, so people not always living their truest self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think asterisk takeaway for the AIs is that when you are not living your truest self, especially if you know what that is, that can have impacts on other people too. And I'm not saying that that requires you to be doing anything here. This is not a guilt trip. But I am saying that I want you to be cognizant that you living your true experience of gender in the world not only will, I would vote, benefit you, at least in your internal experience, maybe not in your external world, and by doing so will likely help others as well. Where do you now, how do you engage with social scripts as of today?
I used to think about them a lot, and I would like write out how I wanted to be treated, and like it came out a lot in creative writing. That was like one of the most joyful experiences of
definitely modality for you.
Writing like a group of gender diverse and like sexuality diverse characters. First iteration of that was actually when I was 19 with a friend. But
join the Patreon and we'll get you the
we'll get you the smut. That's how it started.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Okay, join our OnlyFans and then join the Patreon.
Yeah. Some of those characters just kept resonating with me for like many years. One of them, named Mel, who was like a leader in the community, was like, Paige, I'm trans. You got it wrong. And I was like,
Wait, this character wrote to you?
No, like, I was having like a meditative experience with my inner thoughts and the characters.
Of the characters.
Yeah.
To you. Okay, got it. Yeah.
And it was like, and she was like, you need to explore your gender expression. And this was like the week after I had gone to, like, wore my first dress and bought it as I was wearing it out of the store.
The Ann Arbor Art Fair dress?
Yeah. Yeah, and I was like, yep, I know this too.
I mean, the spirit showed up. The spirit showed up in a character that you wrote for yourself. I mean, I don't know if to call you egotistical or highly creative right there, but well done, whatever that was.
Oh, the egotistical one isn't Mel. That's Stevie, who Mel is dating.
I know. You needed to hear a message and then pulled a character you wrote to tell you the story.
All right. This isn't like a magic podcast so far, but like...
We're talking about gender. What do you think the podcast is about?
Yeah, fair. I'm like, I didn't manifest her. She came to me.
We'll read the comments on that one. We'll just read the comments on that one. I might agree with you on that one. Okay, we're gonna move us on to presentation. Okay, gender presentation. I started the last one, you wanna start this one?
Ooh, presentation. This is sheer. It's on the top. It's got this right above my titties. Makes me feel femme. I don't always present this way. I like wearing heels.
You look good in heels.
Yeah, I look amazing in heels. These heels are amazing.
Those are very cute heels. Good kid.
There's how I feel that I present, and then there's how other people think that I present. And that's like part of the self-perception versus, I would call it, indoctrination into social scripts.
I would too.
Yeah.
How do you expect other people to present their gender? Like, what are your gender presentation expectations?
Of other people?
Of other people.
That feels like I don't have them.
Yeah, that's what I was yeah.
Like, you're asking me a trick question?
That was, yeah. Also, join the Patreon for gender, what was it? Gender expectations of other people's presentations. That's a good t-shirt. Write that up. When you think about how you expect other people to express their gender, you're like, oh, there are no expectations. Like, if however somebody wants to do that is cool. And I might want to learn more, but I don't have any expectation about somebody doing something.
Yeah, no. Nope. I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole there, but it all just ends in nope.
Yep. It does all end in nope. When I think about how I expect other people to express their gender, I no longer expect a specific body type or style of dressing or even anatomical features to necessarily align with an understanding of their own gender. I think in part that's because my experience of my gender is really philosophical. And if my experience of gender is really philosophical, I can only imagine what the other experiences of gender are like. If the universe is that big, I can only imagine how big it is for everybody else.
I just want to relate back to person protests too much. I remember the first time I saw Jonathan Van Ness looking really, really femme, but with facial hair. And inside of me, I was like,
thank you, mama.
Something's not right about this, but if I acknowledge it too loudly, I will have to acknowledge that something's not right about this.
Thank you, Mama Nat.
It's like...
Yeah.
Yeah, and now I'm like thinking back on the experience and I'm like, oh wow, it's been so long since I felt that way on any level that it like takes actual work to do the perspective taking of me when I was like 16 or something.
That's an insight right there. Yeah.
I'm like, when I say it really doesn't matter to me how other people present, like very much in the gender, and I'm talking about some like very specific limits otherwise, but whatever. I really just don't care. I remember what it was like to care, and I'm telling you, I really, really just don't care. And when I see people being like kind of unique, I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think it is a note to say, I'm hearing you say that's a lot of distance too.
Yeah.
Like that was not just a overnight weekend seminar course.
God, wouldn't it be nice?
Wouldn't it be nice? Oh, that'd be so nice. A little like conversion camp in reverse, like deconversion camp, which is
just knock 10 years of emotional labor off my life.
But for real. Yeah, no kidding. Like I just, echo to the audience out there that the move from how I understood gender to where I understand gender now is untold sleepless nights and untold piles of journals and untold gallons of tears to get from where I was to where I am. And I'm willing to bet there's still further to go. It has been a huge, massive amount of work. Also, a lot of work had to go into Christian deprogramming, so maybe connected.
It always is.
It always is. Yeah, and also just thank you, Jonathan Van Ness. Good job.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for all the things. We are here also sometimes an ass, but thank you for all the things. You can fight about that about the comments too. You can join us in the comments for that fight.
It's not a fight. I didn't know.
I had a similar oh wow experience. I'll keep this one brief. I was in Portland, Oregon, as you are, as a queer, and I'm at a local gay nightclub, and it's the gay nightclub, not the queer nightclub. And the music's playing, the dance floor is packed. An annoying amount of you Portlanders were on your phone, I'd like to say, and also there was an annoying amount of heteros in that bar. So. Can you clean that up, Portland, please? Get back on that. I was ticked. I'm writing a consumer's report. And I'm in the bar, and all of a sudden this cheerleader song comes on as the DJ mix, and the spotlight drops, and from the back of the bar comes this cheer squad of 2 AFAB people and 1 male expressing person, but this person is dressed up as the sluttiest cheerleader I have ever seen, with the most non-existent underwear, but also in full body head to toe makeup, just full body shit, but also had a full mustache on and had the face done in a very mask way, but also was dancing in a very femme cheerleader way, surrounded by AFAB cheerleaders, but also intentionally a mask face. And that was just you just in the blender, twist it all up, shake it with a coconut. Because I had, it was just such a gender fuck is what that's called, that it really kind of started tearing stuff apart. In that it came in such a way into my system that it just broke all the rules that I didn't think I had very many rules, but it just like a meteor through a plate glass window shattered more rules that I did not know that I had and allowed me to start experiencing more parts of it. So yeah, a lot of experience in there. So
isn't that always an experience when you find rules that you didn't know you had and you're like, hello, old friend?
Yeah, or that's the fuck what's been wrong with me. One of my favorite things to do is a pastime I have, and then trying to integrate it for the next 5 weeks as you're thinking about it. The last thing I would say on presentation is that when I think about how I want to present my gender out into the world, the way that I want to present is in alignment with the way I feel, which is like it's actively not a thing. And so when I'm picking my clothing, especially as an autistic guy with sensory integration dysfunction, I am almost always picking my clothing or my presentation to help with my sensory issues. So what clothing I'm wearing, if it's a dress or if it's pants, if it's femme or it's mask, is really a sensory question for me. How does it feel on my physical body? And even the way I present my hair or don't present my hair, or what I do as a skincare routine, is also about what helps my sensory system regulate better in the world. And when I do use makeup or clothing to specifically give a presentation, it is more often than not because I know the other people in the room are going to project a gender onto me, and I want to influence what they're seeing. What I would like them to see is gender is actively not a thing for this person, and we should not be engaging with them in any preconceived gender perceptions that we have. But I don't currently know how to telegraph that in a presentation way to other people. Like, how do you present yourself in a gender null way? How do you present yourself in a gender void way?
You spent some time as a Zen monk,
I
right?
did do that, interesting enough. And also, kind of look like one now. Interesting that, yeah. A thing there. And I have to think more about this. Talking about understandings of gender being shattered. And so when I present my gender intentionally, for me, it is often about the sensory side, but it's also very much about, since I have already given up on the hope that anybody will be able to experience me the way that I'm experienced, at least the vast majority of the time, I'm now going to try to control how other people see my gender and what they're seeing in me, because they are unlikely to be able to have the experience that I'm having even. And the theory of mind that it takes to think about being gender null is a pretty extreme ability to have a theory of not mind about that. Thus, I choose to control things. I feel like this is a hot take side note. A hot take side note is that in the queer community, I am often perceived, or people project onto me, a cis white hetero man. I often get seen that way out in public around people. That's oftentimes what their assumption is. And in queer spaces, that often gets projected onto me. And I know that because I've had many specific conversations about this. And in queer space, it's kind of this strange world. Like in the rest of the world, you have like cis white hetero male privilege. In the queer world, all that privilege gets oftentimes turned upside down and you are in the bottom of the totem pile. And there can be a lot of negative feedback from that. So when I present my gender in those spaces, it's not uncommon that I'm trying to telegraph something to soften that perception that people are hurling at me and the way that they're treating me. Not everybody. And it's a very justified experience. And I have benefited from the privileges. But because I don't think even in these queer spaces that people can experience gender the way I do, and I don't know how to telegraph it to them anyways, I'm picking an expression which I hope will soften the blows, because we're not going to be able to communicate it about it anyways. That's an important part of my gender part expression. Any other thoughts about gender presentation?
I remember when I was first doing femme, and I'm like, I have to wear at least 5 things that cue me as feminine. But also, I have no desire to pass as a cis woman.
That's a statement.
Yeah.
I think you've also mentioned that as you were going through your gender expression journey, that there were times that, I don't want to say you detransitioned, but you transitioned out of a phase that you were in into a new phase. And I feel like you've made comments that was not always perceived as acceptable in the gender queer spaces you were in.
Well, I had no desire to go on HRT, which was like really uncommon. I had no desire to pass as a cis woman. And I was like,
And was that perceived as uncommon too?
maybe, but there wasn't like any animosity around it in the spaces I was hanging out in. Like at the time, I wasn't hanging out in a lot of queer spaces. After the pandemic, I moved back to Ann Arbor. And I'm like, there was a trans woman the one time I came here before. I need to talk to that person. Also, that must be a safe space to wear a dress. So I started going to that bar that I am now still regularly going to, at least on the weekends. And I was like, it's not a queer space. And I looked up the one queer bar that was in Ann Arbor, Out Bar, and that died from the pandemic.
And was not a queer space anyways.
I was in there like one time ever.
I was in there several times. And
Okay.
it was not a queer space.
Okay. So I was like, well, this is the place that I can go. And these people are great. And I'm having a lot of social anxiety. So having activities to do like play pool helps me get over that. So I just started playing pool a lot and wearing dresses and playing pool in heels. And I can still do that. I'm quite proud of it. But that's an aside. Never really had the desire to pass as a cis woman, but like Ann Arbor is its own unique thing. And like the straight people there and the cis people there are still like, I have no experience with whatever this is, but I guess I should support it.
Ann Arbor! On the note. Right on the note. You've been clocked. Clocked.
So like, it almost, in a weird way, was like its own nice little queer space where I got to define what queerness was.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, because there had not been like a new gender regime had rolled in yet. It was still in like gender, we don't know, but okay.
Yeah.
World. It allowed you some additional window of freedom.
Yeah. But also people were like cool with me being in like the women's bathroom, which is like a whole thing of tension. There was a vibe right after everybody got vaccinated and everybody was back in social spaces again, and everybody's like, my internal programming feels like it's wrong to be in public, but I know that it's right. So everybody was like breaking a bunch of social rules together because everybody's like, we're here.
We had that phase, everybody, remember that?
And then I was doing gender altered presentation inside of that. And there was like this whole like
window of, well, I guess we're back.
Yeah.
We do that now. That changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. That did happen during the pandemic. That was I think a pretty significant cultural shift happened because we all paused our collective made up storytelling that we were doing for a little while. We didn't pause it entirely, but we paused play acting it out in person.
Yeah.
And then when we came back, we had lost some of the plot essentially, and we now had some more creative freedom that we had not had before.
Exploring gender at that particular moment was pretty great.
Yeah. My experience of the pandemic of gender is I was out of the country, and not only was the pandemic part happening, but I was out of the country in a lot of cities and spaces that were much more career friendly. And I was also, for the first time in my life, feeling good in my body. So I was eating well, I was working out well, I was sleeping well. That'll tell you something. The best time I felt in my body was when I was not in this country. And I got...
Everybody I know who's lived outside of this country has said that.
And yet we're still here. Why? Sugar daddies, line us up. You can find me at... Europeans, or Tanzanians, or people from Guam, anybody, please. But for real, I started to get hot. Like I was pretty hot, and because I was now had some privilege in these spaces, I felt like I was able to start expressing the way that I wanted to. And I no longer felt like I had to play the roles that I had to play when I was a fat bitch earlier on, because I was a fat, depressed bitch. Not all people are fat, are bitches, or bad, but I was a fat bitch. That also allowed me to start dropping additional rules because I felt like I had some more room to navigate, essentially. Like I was now a cooler kid in the space, so I could also now break some additional rules. I was more privileged, so I could break more rules. And specifically doing that in that window, I think is a gift. For the conservative Trumpers watching, our family, love you for making it this far. And I would like to point out that you are correct that Paige and I both have Ann Arbor as a significant part of our story. And the pandemic and the breaking of the social fabric as part of our story. And lots of trauma as part of our story. You are all correct. And I think some of you would take those facts, put them in a cocktail shaker, and come up with a QAnon-style narrative on what's going on here. What I want to point out is that what each of those things had in common and what each of those gave us was freedom, a new degree of freedom, or we might say a new degree of safety, to explore something new in our lives. That's what all of those things gave us. And what you'll hear us saying is that none of this from our experience was because of some sexual trauma. And even if it is, that's still valid. Nor is any of our part of our stories so far about somebody telling us what our gender should be. The only time we ever used anybody else to navigate our gender journey was when we saw them as kind of presenting a new way of things, how things could be, or took it as like inspiration of, oh, I want to try that. Not because we were trying to be cool, not because we were trying to be woke, not because we were trying to like get somewhere in the social world, but because that inspired us. Like we saw ourselves in part of that and wanted to move towards it. So you are correct, my QAnon loving brethren, that liberal spaces helped us move significantly.
Oh,
in this
that's
process.
me.
That is you, man. That is you. In a pool bar regularly. Also very good at pool. I can attest. Wait, we haven't played yet, have we?
I don't think we have.
I can attest. You know, wonder where I got really good at pool?
Where?
the game room of Community Bible Church in Brighton, Michigan, because I was a weirdos, freaks, fat bitch, and that means I was outcast from all the social circles, so we got the pool table in the back room. So you are correct that all those things are true, but what they were giving us was freedom. What they were giving us was room to express what was more authentic to us. And all of the things that you think cause these things are not part of our narrative stories here. So there. Anything else on presentation before we move on to PPAs? Okay, PPAs, or peripheral perspective adjustments. Peripheral perspective adjustments. Paige and I talk about, in our experience of gender, there's multiple different levels. And if you kind of zoom out to the furthest level, we are spiritual beings living a physical existence for fill-in-the-gap reasons. And that means that our bodies here are essentially peripherals to who we are so that we can engage in this little made-up narrative story world that we happen to be in. And just like you might have a glove on your hand, and that glove could be leather, it could be latex, it could be a wet, slimy cleaning glove, it could be a felted winter glove, and that glove could be too big or too small, or one finger could be twisted, or like the finger is like down and inside and up another finger so you can't quite get part of your hand out, right? Gloves can feel different ways on you, and you may want to modify the glove to feel a certain way. You might want to cut off a finger so you have your thumb can type on something. You might want to dry the glove out because it's wet. You don't like that. You may want to modify the way that you are experiencing this part of reality. And it turns out that we can modify our bodies, which, if we're souls living a physical existence, this is essentially a peripheral. And our peripheral looks out into the world and we have different perspectives, right? If you've ever been hangry, you have had a different perspective, all right? If you have ever gotten up on the wrong side of the bed, you have a different perspective. If you've ever had an orgasm, you have had a different perspective. You have had a different perspective, I can guarantee it. And regardless of what your perspective is, you have some ability to control and modify it. And you might do that in different places. Like you have a glove, you have a sock, you have a hat. You might change all those because they're different parts of your experience. Just like you can change all those, your gender is part of the thing that you are experiencing. It's like the pinky of your left hand glove, and you can modify that pinky so that the sock puck that fits better. So some people choose to modify this peripheral to change how it is perceived, or how it perceives other things, if it's hangry or not, and make adjustments to that intentionally. So a big thought here is that when you are born into the world, a lot of people say, well, whatever glove you get, that's the right glove. You can't modify it at all. Change it. If you got a moldy, wet glove, well, that's what the good Lord gave you. So you just need to stay in that moldy, wet glove the rest of the time. And even if one finger is inside out, that's what you got. And what people who question their gender or change their peripheral perceptions or adjust the peripheral perceptions are doing are going, this glove does not fit my hand. One finger's inside the other. I'm going to move that over here. And I know it's better because it fits now. And I can feel it fitting better. And this moldy, disgusting, we're done with this. I want to have a clean, shiny, vegan leather glove. And that feels so much better, doesn't it? Oh, I just love that so much better. And there's no finger inside of the other finger. This now fits me.
Ooh.
And I have it sitting in my shopping cart. And now that it fits me, I know it fits me because it feels right on me. And the ways that you modify your gender experience can be many, many fold.
Hold on. Are you sure this metaphor is going to land? Are you sure that the people you're talking to have ever had something that actually fit them right?
No, of course not.
That's not going to resonate as a metaphor.
No, not especially to our, conservative Christian family who has never heard of a tailor. But no, most people aren't going to get this anyway. You are correct. And we love you, Fields. We love you, Fields. But, Fields and front people start with Fs. Just saying. So when we talk about peripheral perception adjustments, what we're saying is we just like it is not moral or immoral to change your glove. It is not moral or immoral to adjust this. and you can adjust it in many ways, just like you can adjust your glove. That's what I want to get on the table as we start that conversation. The other thing I want to say in this category is I do not identify as transgender, because to me, the term trans is like transatlantic, trans-specific. I went from here to there. I transitioned from A to B in some way. And I don't feel like I am trans in that I moved from A to B. Feel like I transitioned in moving from I have to pretend that I'm something to, oh, I'm not anything and I don't have to pretend that I'm not anything. So I have made a transition in how I perceive myself as gender, but I don't feel like I'm crossing. And that is a great gift in many ways, especially because the body I'm born into, while it is gendered and I don't like that part, I don't feel like it is a mismatch, and I should be in a body that is significantly different than the body that I'm in. I don't have a mismatch between how I experience myself in the body that I'm in. A lot of people do.
A hot mess of gender soup.
A hot mess of gender soup. And that is a very unique and very challenging perspective, and not something that I can speak to well. And I want to say that in the whole conversation of gender, and dear listener, should you be listening to this, congratulations for making it an hour and a half in, that you need to go listen to some people whose body and experience of gender do not match, because if you do not go listen to those people, you have missed a big part of the gender pie here. So caveat. Over to you.
We're talking about alterations,
PPAs,
which stands for
peripheral perspective adjustment. See,
when I was really femme.
do you feel like you're not really femme?
Not in this particular moment. I was like, I want tits. And I might not want anything else, but that would be amazing. And I'm like, implants only last maybe 7 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And they can cause issues.
They can.
And I was like,
I've watched Botch, I know.
I don't want to manage that for the rest of my life. That sounds like a lot of work. And I am kind of lazy sometimes. What's weird is when I feel really femme, I want that. And when I feel really masc, I don't think about it at all. And sometimes I'd like to think when I'm feeling really masc of like, what would it be like for me to have titties right now?
And how does that sentence resolve when you think that?
I don't know, it's like I have more chest. Let me flex.
It's not.
It'll just be pec muscles.
It's not incongruous.
No.
Yeah, that's an interesting experience.
Also, sometimes I would like to have both a cock and a vagina. And have the best of both worlds.
I feel like that would be fun just for the sake of being fun. And it's not even a gendered thing. Like, for me, that's not a gender sentence in any way.
Yeah, I guess it's not for me either.
No.
That just sounds like a good time.
What do you want to say about hormones or HRT or other neurotransmitters? That was kind of the original title of this topic, and I wanted to expand it.
It sure was, but basically I'm unqualified to speak on the subject is my big point. I included that because, it's so central to so many experiences of gender with, the people that I know and have talked about. Mm-hmm. I've talked to.
Yeah.
But HRT never appealed to me.
Yeah.
I would think about it sometimes, and I'd be like, I feel like I'm thinking about it because I'm supposed to be thinking about it. And that was kind of that. And then, we know so many people where, that's really central. And if we want to go down that road a little bit, presenting with, she, they pronouns, and then presenting with, they, he, they sometimes. Sometimes I get some shade from the people who have done HRT, and they're like, you never did that? You must never really have felt the way that you did. And I'm like, what the fuck? But, I'm trying to keep the mood a little bit lighter here. But that is a real experience.
This is not a comedy. This is a horror podcast. This is magic.
Oh, yeah. I thought I was showing up to happy, bubbly gender time.
No, this is the horror podcast. This is an American podcast about gender. It's a horror show.
Well, I'm gonna be Dora in Call of Duty.
That's my analogy. Give me my analogy back.
Okay.
Yeah, I think earlier we were talking about experiencing hostility from people of other experiences of gender.
Yeah.
And that's a thing that happens.
Yeah. The way that I like to think about it in a very compassionate way is these group of people are so used to being told your expression isn't real or it isn't valid that, like, witnessing somebody say, oh, actually, I'm not exactly there, even though I said I was at one point, is like huge trauma trigger.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I get where these people are coming from, and I can have compassion about this. But, like, also, it's not like trauma is unrelated to people throwing shade.
True. I sometimes throw it not traumatized, but also true. Yeah.
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 Like,
I think that is, and that's another little key here, dear listener, is that very few people I know, and no Americans I know, do not have a donut of scar tissue around of gender. Like, I know nobody who grew up in a safe space to talk about this, who hasn't had to do a ton of deprogramming, who isn't just raw around this topic. And because of that, even within queer spaces, there can be so much trauma and fear and unprocessed emotion that it could be more unsafe to have a gender expression in a queer space than to do that in a straight space.
especially if your straight space is Ann Arbor.
Especially if your straight space is Ann Arbor. We love you, Ann Arborites. What's their team? Go Wolverines! Yay! I think that is something which is terribly depressing, but also extremely true and often unnamed. That a level of animosity from a queer person with one gender expression and a queer person of another gender expression can be tenfold that between a queer person and a cis person, especially if that cis person is a supporting cis person. And that's really sad, but also really true. And kind of explains some of why we go around traumatizing each other so much, which we do quite a bit.
Yeah. Not everybody's trauma is compatible with everyone else's trauma.
Ain't that the truth? That the truth. The one thing I do want to say about hormones, neurotransmitters, and the like is that I have gone through a not insignificant amount of psychiatric medication in my life. And it has changed my experience of my gender at times. And I never, during that process, just a couple times actually, that's going to be a thought I'm going to come back to. There are few occasions where my gender felt kind of more in focus or the glove fit better, but there were times. And because I don't feel like I have a deep mismatch in my body, or not something that I can express while I'm physically incarnated in a body at least, I know what a little bit of that friction feels like. I know what the existential level feels like. But when it kind of came into better focus or alignment, it was like a shoulder coming back into the socket.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a shoulder coming back into the socket. So I can only imagine and have a theory of mind for what somebody whose experience of gender is opposite of what I know that that's putting gender in a binary, whatever, opposite of what their body is in. And so just like I have had a small experience of my shoulder coming back into the socket, I can only imagine that's like every bone in their body is dislocated and it finally comes back in after they snap things together. And the reason people might choose to change their peripheral perspective adjustments category is because they're trying to get it more in line. And again, just like we talked about, earlier in people experiencing that mismatch, also people who have gone through hormone HRT transitions or done significant physical alterations to their physical body have a huge part of this gender narrative that is not being told in this podcast that we are now representing here, not pretending to represent, couldn't even represent if we wanted to. So go listen to those people too if you want to hear more about gender expressions, because that is an experience that we have a little minor expressions with, but not deep experiences. Last but not least, folks, long podcast, is a category 5, which is dysphoria and euphoria. Gender dysphoria and euphoria.
Yes.
This is really important to your story.
Yeah, I put on the dress, wore it off the store, got euphoria, said, I want to feel this way for the rest of my life. And then, okay, it wasn't as extreme on like the first day because you got that like good endorphin rush. But like when it settled down, it didn't settle down anywhere close back to where it was. It was just like, I'm riding high and it's not stopping. Is this what it is like to not struggle with chronic depression? Because I had struggled with chronic depression my entire adult life. And I was like, suddenly, I'm not anymore. What is this? Which maybe we could categorize that in some level of like not self-aware dysphoria, but I honestly don't feel like that word really applies.
So if that was a 8 out of 10 euphoria experience,
Yeah.
on an average day now, what would you say your average euphoria level is? Gender euphoria.
I mean, like, exist in like corporate American culture. Of my experience of gender euphoria recently,
Yes, your cumulative 30-day running average.
struggle with chronic depression anymore, and that's a big bonus.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call that related to gender euphoria directly.
So you say it was correlational that your deep depression and your gender reveal were simultaneous?
No, they both like impacted each other. Absolutely. And at the same time, it was like, I no longer have that weight on my shoulders. But the weight on my shoulders is not the same thing as depression.
And would you say the weight has come back?
And I feel weight about other things now.
So back to gender expression, do you feel as coherent in your gender expression as you did wearing the dress?
As a person,
Little Don Don's the president. None of us are feeling coherent currently because the world is not coherent because pedophiles are running the planet or aliens.
I felt like everything was like, not like perfectly integrated, but in just like this really good, rich space of like, it was all there. That was me.
I'm going to keep asking this question. How does that compare to now?
That was so much better. Right now sucks. But right now sucks for multiple reasons.
True. Yes.
So I'm not gonna lump it all in like gender will fix everything.
Yeah. I think the lesson I want you, dear listener, to hear in this is that there could be a moment of gender euphoria. Walk into a store, that dress looks good, try it on, doesn't fit me, that's fine, I'll keep looking, try this dress on, I'm not even taking it off. Out the walk a couple blocks, get 4 compliments.
I exaggerated a little bit. I had to walk 7 blocks to get 3 compliments. But
We'll round it to the
whatever.
clearest 4 compliment ratio. And you're getting, but in that moment, you haven't done a ton of work on gender. You have, but there hasn't been this years and years of programming or deprogramming and emotional labor that's happening. It's just a moment. You put the dress on and you're at, bang, here we are.
If the entire world could experience that, we would live in a much better world.
And if the entire experience, the world could experience a good orgasm, we'd also live in a much better world. Related topic.
I shit you not. Maybe it's my experience of orgasm isn't fantastic, but that level of gender euphoria is just better. It is better.
We'll also have a podcast with a sex expert to talk about that.
Can you imagine that just lasting for multiple weeks and it not making you like non-functional as a being?
Having that experience because you put it on a dress versus you would think that if you had done now all of this work around gender for years and years and years, that you would of course be way higher than that, but not currently.
No, because here's something we haven't talked about, which I guess it fits well enough into the euphoria dysphoria. When I was first seeing a mutual friend, one of the conversations that we had was like, I don't feel entirely comfortable existing in my, like, feminine feels distant from me, and that feels hard. Because for reasons I don't really want to get into right now, it does. And then masculine feels hard for different reasons. Because when I embody masculine, I have to like consciously be aware of, this is just part of the experience for me, that like when people look at me, they see their past trauma with like cis white men. And like I exist in a world that's like larger than myself, and I have to acknowledge that.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And I'm like, so like going and embodying masculine feels like, yes, I am of these people. And then it's like, yes, sometimes some of these people really suck. And look, I am doing mask now and feeling that way because it is part of the range of experiences that I can feel. And like, I have perspective taking as a person. And I get that when you look at me, you're like, I don't know if I feel safe with you. And I'm like, kind of fair. Like, the world isn't a safe place.
True. Yeah. No, it is fair critique.
Yeah. But then kind of related to all of that, like there was an experience where somebody saw in a moment that I was feeling really femme, like cued me as being just like their past abuser like, cis white man. And that fucked with my ability to experience femininity real fucking hard.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I'm embodying, feeling, presenting in a dress.
Even when I'm at my most femme.
Even when I'm at my most femme.
Still, in my eyes, see abuser mask.
Yes. And I was like, I didn't know how to process any of that. And kind of like I'm still working through it.
Yeah, there's no way to process that.
I'm like...
That is such a perspective mismatch.
Yeah. I'm like, what you liked about me was that I didn't present that way. And I thought you, like, saw me. But also, like, I have to be compassionate that, like, you have very real trauma. And, like, I've had to figure out how to, like... I've had to figure out how to not feel my gender in order to be compassionate to other people. But also, fuck that shit.
Yeah. And I think, side note here, and this is a very kind of niche comment, which is, oh, dear listener, a lot of people will go, people born into cis white male bodies, what a pain, you get little, disadvantage here. Fair, like, I often get passing privilege, and so I get it. But also, what I want you to hear in this story, which is true for both of us, which is in a moment when we were shattered in our gender experience, our choice was to just take that trauma and shove it down and respond in the moment to your trauma response for perceiving us in a way that we didn't want to be perceived, or actually was amazingly destructive to us to know you perceived us that way because we thought you were perceiving us for who we actually were, and you weren't. It wasn't your fault. But we shoved that down and we rushed to your rescue. And, I'm not going to call that amends or reparations here, but I also want to label that as A, what a fucked up situation that's what's had to happen. And B, that should also be named as something happening in the emotional labor power dynamic conversation that's happening here.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
And that doesn't mean that your trauma isn't real, but that doesn't also mean that our trauma isn't real. And many of us gender non-binary, gender void people in male bodies, especially Caucasian ones, often are not allowed to have our reactions to being misperceived validated because people who have looked like us have done bad stuff in the past. And to me too. And that is part of this conversation that happens here. And it's not often named or talked about, and that's what we do here. My experience of gender euphoria and dysphoria there have been times where I experienced euphoria when my grandmother curled my hair, when I wore my mother's heels. And it wasn't because I was experiencing my true gender. It was because I was shaking loose of the shackles, the full body shackles that I had been put in around gender. And I was experiencing that it could be something other than what I was told that it had to be. And when I work on when do I feel the most euphoric about my gender, it's when it is a total non-thing to me. And it's a total non-thing to everybody else. And not only is it a total non-thing, I'm actively perceived as a being that this is not a relevant or active space in a negative sense of the world. It's not just we're all copacetic about it. It's just that section of the universe has been control-alted, deleted over here, and I like it that way. It's not broken. And rarely do I see people perceiving me as that. The times I do see it is often in ceremonial or spiritual spaces. And when I am most in line with my gender is when I am living in a way and expressing in a way which aligns with my sensory experiences, but also is a way where I'm not cueing or masking for other people, be that autistic or holistic, queer or straight or whatever other letter of the alphabet you want. It's when I don't have to mask for any reason to anybody else, including myself. And I feel the most gender euphoric when in that perspective scale, I'm zoomed out. When my stress is down-regulated, when I am engaging with the world from that higher level of perspective, that is when I feel most coherent around my gender. And that has played out in many different ways throughout my life, kind of how I've gotten here. But the invitation I'd like you to hear in this is that however you experience your gender, we talked about gender holes earlier, wherever you are experiencing your gender and however you can come more into coherence with that, if it's putting on a dress, if it's taking off a dress, if it's wearing heels, if it's finding stable looks, whatever it is, that could be something to worth exploring if you want to. And B, that if you choose to do that thing, what you'll hear in every one of these levels from Paige and I is that other people have helped us by doing it. By you doing your thing, it helped us do our thing, even if our things were very different. You doing your thing helped us do our thing. And even if that's you playing into whatever bit you're already playing into, these are all made up social scripts anyways, to a greater or lesser extent. Go for it. Go for it.
I have two things.
Two things.
First is, you know what they say about gender holes.
What do they say about gender holes, Paige?
It's fun to put things in them and see how they feel.
Whoops! Demonetized. Demonetized, especially if you have both of those appendages we talked about earlier.
The second thing was, there was this really interesting experience, and you've talked a lot about how, like, presenting one way helps other people. For a little bit, I was going to this bar in Fenton, and...
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
keep going. Keep going.
It was this nice space where I could wear a dress and it was good.
In Fenton?
In Fenton! And...
We're sorry, Fenton. I didn't mean to clock you like that, but...
It was... like... Yeah, it was like that. And, like, one of the people... Like, there was this man who was, like, 45 and kind of like burly came up to me, and I was like, I don't know what was happening, and he was like,
is this about the trans men at Menjo's last week?
No,
different burly man.
And he was like, thank you for presenting queer here. And I was like, what?
Thank you.
He was like, my kid is genderqueer and I want them to feel safe presenting here in the future. It was like a thank you for your service for being queer here. And I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. So for all y'all who present queer in spaces where you might not expect people to present queer, thank you for your service.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Claps to you. Well, that's 5 perspectives on gender.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot more. Any closing thoughts that you'd have?
5 aspects with 2 thoughts.
5 aspects, 2 thoughts.
And 10 thoughts if we multiply.
Can you put all of those in a gender hole?
We'll find out.
Just make sure it has a flared base. It's real important. That's what they tell me. It's what the fire department said last time.
It's what my friend the ER doctor says too.
You should have known better. You should have known better. All right. To wrap up, dear listeners, thank you for sticking with us for this nearly 2 hours. Thank you for dealing with all of the crazy video things. This is our 000 beta episode here. The five aspects of gender, because you should be writing these down at this point. You should be writing these down. Is self-perception, your self-perception of gender. 2 is the social scripts around gender, both your own and others. 3 is your gender presentation and how that interacts with other people. 4 is the needs to be renamed peripheral perspective adjustments, which I do feel is an upgrade from neurotransmitters, but actually that would have, there's are all ones where we should go.
We also talked about body alteration.
Yeah, I know, which is why we came up with the stupid acronym. I came up with the stupid acronym. I'll take the blame for that one. And the last one was dysphoria and euphoria. If you'd like to scream at us in the comments, please do use our proper pronouns. That would be nice. Yes, we appreciate that. If you would like to...
Just use they, them, it's cool.
If you'd like to... If you use anything other than my exact proper pronouns, which I have not shared on this podcast, and you say nasty things, you are misgendering me. I just want you to know that. Coming for you. If you've agreed with this podcast, feel free to put it in the comments. If you would like to get more of Paige, do you want to share our social media? If people want to come rave about
If you want to get more of Paige, put in the comments that you want me back on the podcast.
Well, that's easy. You're obviously coming back on the podcast. They have somebody else to do dumb tech stuff with.
Well, then they get exactly what they want.
We might add something around this if they want to. If you're interested more in the Miscalaireomm, you can find that at the miscalaireomm.org. That's MISCALAIREOMM. Miscalaireomm. Also, the socials around here are probably still here. We're at Miscalaireomm on social medias as well. SpencerField.me on Instagram, although that might change. Thank you for joining us for episode 1. Paige, thank you for joining us, telling about your stories. I'll see you in the comments, girls.
All right. There's only one thing left to do.
Meow. Meow. Meow, meow, meow.
Meow, meow, meow. Meow, 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 meow.
It took me like half a second to fuck, there's a callback. What's the callback?